Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The Eyes in the Forest. The forest was bright and warm. The sunlight dappled across the leaf-covered ground in a way that evoked images of autumn holiday, brochures, and children laughing. There was a slight breeze rustling the upper branches, but down at ground level, all it did was bring the warmth of the sun in from out in the meadows all around. For everyone not working, it was a weekend to head out and make the most of the last of summer before the cold settled in. It was, I thought, a terrible place for a murder scene. "All right, Andrews?" my boss asked as he came over. Despite the fair weather, he was still clutching a takeout cup of coffee like a lifeline, and I could smell the alcohol from whatever he'd been doing last night. "All right, sir. I didn't think you were on duty today." Judging by the state of Detective Matthews, neither had he. However reckless he was on his nights off, Matthews was a consummate professional out in the field when the public could see him. Tell me about it. But 4 bodies in 3 months. No one gets their Saturdays when that happens. Some of us didn't have many Saturdays anyway, but I only gave him a tight smile in response. It wasn't right to bitch about hours and shift patterns when there was a dead body in the vicinity. Another car pulled up into the cordoned off area, and Matthews turned to watch it. It wasn't a vehicle I recognized, but I wouldn't have considered myself an expert on the department's cars. Besides, 4 bodies in 3 months. This was when the top brass got called in, and all the specialists scraped up from wherever they usually lurked. Matthews was having the same thought. More goddamn people sticking their noses in, telling me what to do. He walked back over to the car park, still muttering, leaving me to my solo guard duty. The investigators would go over the area first. Then maybe I'd get called in to help sweep the area. Until then, my contribution to catching a murderer was to stand still and keep people away. Of course, to get to me, they'd have already had to get through 2 other police cordons. I was nothing more than window dressing at this stage. But the more serious the crime, the more window dressing the bosses wanted. Couldn't let the press take a photo of empty space now, could we? Whoever had just turned up seemed to causing something of a stir with the other detectives. They all had more sense than to start shouting. But I recognized the way Matthews had started pacing. A few words drifted across the forest to me, though I didn't get much other than tone. No one was happy about the new person turning up, and I wondered what sort of specialist would cause such a stink. Maybe it's our own Sherlock Holmes. I thought to myself with a snort. It would make the shift more interesting, at least. But there was no way that Sherlock Holmes would work with a modern policing system. All those deductions and assumptions, the evidence courts would be laughing themselves to death. The new arrival was coming my way. I wiped the smirk from my face and stood up a little straighter, staring dead ahead as I watched them out the corner of my eye. Smart suit, skinny glasses, slightly cropped tie, and far younger than I'd expected for a specialist. At a guess, I'd put the man at a few years older than me, early 30s or so, although he could just have had one of those faces that ages well. His height didn't help, and though the ground was uneven, he was about eye level with me when he stopped. "Officer Andrews?" he asked, scanning me up and down. I'd braced for this moment. Who doesn't love a woman in uniform? But there was nothing to his look. It was more like he was trying to read my name on my legs, rather than checking out any curve they may or may not have had. "Yes, sir." Even though he was nameless, anyone out of uniform at a crime scene was pretty much guaranteed to be my superior. Better safe than sorry. "Can you take me down to the crime scene, please? One moment, sir." I'd barely tapped the call button on my radio before Matthews started waving his arm at me and giving the thumbs up. I tried to nod back, though he didn't watch long enough to see. "Right this way, sir." I led the way through the trees to where the body had been found, all the while fighting down the urge to kick the leaves as I went. Precise placement wasn't worth preserving when the leaves were so light and likely to move naturally. But it was hardly very professional. We came round one particularly large tree, meant to keep the victim out of sight, we figured. And there she was. No name, no purse, no shoes, clothing torn. Despite the warm air, I shivered. There was no getting used to this bit. "Here, sir," I said. It was obvious, but it didn't feel right to just wave and go, "Ta-da!" Poor woman needed some respect in death, even if she didn't get any in life. "Thank you, Andrews. You can go back to your post now. Are you sure, sir?" Solo investigation. Seriously? And I hadn't even gotten the man's name, let alone his rank or speciality. But Matthews had waved me on. If this went wrong, I could pin the blame on him, right? No, that was childish. "I'm sure. Thank you." As he dismissed me, he knelt down by the body and started looking at it, leaving me to walk away. I turned back half a dozen times, but he didn't seem to be doing anything, just staring, waiting, perhaps. But then what for? Me to leave? My stomach tied itself in knots, and I looked at the dead woman's face. I didn't like leaving her here alone with him. Rank left me with no option, though. I dragged my heavy feet back to where I'd been standing, and was grateful to see that Matthews had wandered closer again. "Sir?" I said, as I came up behind him. "What's up?" he asked. Despite the coffee cup hanging empty in his fingers, he looked rougher than he had earlier. Whoever the stranger with the body was, he sure could rile people up. "Am I good to leave him alone?" "Sir, only protocol and all," Matthew snorted. "Ah, protocol? Some fancy arse from God knows where rocks up, and suddenly we're ignoring. Yeah, it's fine, Andrews. He's got special dispensation." Curiosity got the better of me. "How come?" "Because of his impeccable completion rate. Solved more crimes than half of our department by all accounts. So the sun shines from him, and we all have to bend over and worship. Damn it. If I knew we'd be standing around with our thumbs up our arses, I'd have gone and gotten another coffee." I bit back all my opinions on what that would do for the twitch under his eye, and watched as he walked away again. Curiosity was still burning inside me. Impeccable completion rate? What did that even mean? And if he worked alone, did that mean he had some secret technique for solving crimes? I headed back to my post, but when I got there, I checked over my shoulder. No one was watching, not that they had any reason to. All the detectives were huddled together, all complaining, judging by the way they folded their arms or put their hands on their hips. They really were quite a melodramatic lot. The other uniforms about were scanning the area, sorting paperwork, checking maps, milling about, trying to look useful. There was no telling when a camera could appear. I slipped past my spot and retraced my steps back to the body. There couldn't be some secret technique for solving crimes. So what exactly was that guy doing? I had to know. And I had to know that it wasn't anything dodgy. Even with clearance from the boss, I'd brought the man out here and I'd left him here. He was my responsibility. Between the crispy leaves and my full uniform, it was hard to sneak. But I did the best I could until I got to a nearby tree. From there, I could lean round and watch the guy work. It took me a few moments and lots of blinking before I registered what I was seeing. The man was crouched on the ground where I'd left him, but he wasn't looking at the woman. He was focused on the pair of squirrels sat across from him on the other side of the corpse. To add insult to injury, he was talking to them. So it wasn't an attack here. This was just a body dump. My shoulders slumped. A great detective, wonderful record, and his secret technique was explaining things to animals. My brother would talk out programming problems to his dog. But this was just ridiculous. At least no one else saw my brother doing that. And at least he wasn't doing it for a murder inquiry. Yeah, the man knew her, was crying the whole time. I froze at the other voice. There was no way. Did he say anything? The detective asked. Yeah, the squirrel. The squirrel, replied. Kept apologizing saying it was an accident. I'm sorry, that sort of thing. And then what? He took her shoes, the other goddamn squirrel said. Then he ripped her shirt, rumpled her clothes and all. She was properly dressed before she got here. He did all that here. Anything else? Don't think so. That all you need? Yes. Thank you. That's most helpful. The detective smiled and nodded at the squirrels before they turned and scurried away. My eyes were dry from the non-blinking staring, and I ran a hand across my face. There was no way I just saw that. Had Matthews infected me with his hangovers? The detective pulled out his notebook and jotted down some notes before he looked up and round the clearing. I only just ducked back behind the tree in time. Is there anyone else? He said, just loud enough to carry, but not enough to reach back to where the other officers were. Heaven forbid they see him talking to the animals. On cue, a mouse scurried up and perched on a branch sticking out of the leaves. Yes, it said. And what did you see? See? Not much. But they smelt the same. Her and the one who brought her. Exactly the same? Like they lived together? Just so. Thank you. Anything else? No. Don't see much, I'm afraid. No worries. Thank you for your help anyway. The mouse scurried away as the detective made more notes, and the last strand of my sanity snapped. I stormed out from my hiding space, oblivious to the fact I was marching through a crime scene. All right, what the hell is going on? I said. The detective jumped to his feet, guilty as though he'd killed the woman, before a carefully schooled expression took over. I am investigating this murder, officer. You should be back at your post. No, none of that. What the hell is happening? How the hell are the animals talking? And why the hell are you so calm about it? Miss, I can assure you. He cut off mid-sentence and stared at me as though I was the weird one in this scenario. Hang on? Talking? Don't pull that crap with me. I saw you taking notes. You heard them, but so did you. You heard the animals talking? Yes, but how? He ignored the anguish in my voice and just kept staring. I was halfway through, weighing up whether to just punch him, assaulting a superior, and how would I explain why, when he broke into huge grin. I hadn't realized how morose he'd looked before, and I blushed at the sheer childlike joy on his face. I've never met anyone else like this before, he whispered. Hey, prove it. Mouse, come back. The mouse scurried up again, though it shuffled away when it saw me. Yes? The detective spun to me and nodded. Go on, talk to it. I said. Would this count as playing along? Or was I losing my mind as well? For the first time in my life, I wanted nothing more than to be on guard duty. Hello? Mouse? Greetings, the mouse said with a little bow. I shook my head. I wasn't bowing to a mouse. Yes, fine. Greetings. Are we done now? I asked the detective. Because I am currently talking to a mouse, and I would like some explanations. One more thing, he said. Ask it about the weather. Are you for real right now? Just do it. I rolled my eyes, but academy training was hard to kick. Someone says jump. You ask how high, or ask after the weather. How's the weather? I said to the mouse with a wild grin on my face. Fair, the mouse replied. The leaves are falling early this year, but the rain has stayed off for now. Great. The detective took a step towards me and peered at my face. What did he say? You heard what it said. No, you tell me. Repeat what the mouse said. Shaking my head at the stupidity of the statement, I did as I was told. The leaves are falling early, but the rain has stayed off for now. Is that it? Are we done with this madness now? You really did hear it. Yes, I told you that. Yes, I'm sorry. I just had to make sure that you weren't lying. All sense of decorum went out the window. Look, mate, of all the things I'm going to lie about, I can hear mice complain about the weather isn't one of them. The detective ran a hand across his hair and smiled sheepishly. Yeah, guess not. I'm sorry. Like I said, I've never met anyone else who can do this. I had to be sure, but you know, how? How are we hearing animals talk? No idea. I've never found any explanation or even a suggestion that it's happened before. Then how did I discover it? I used to do it as a kid, but then I figured it was just something wrong with my head. One day, I got fed up at a crime scene, saw a squirrel, and asked for help. And it led me right to where the stolen goods had been stashed. Insurance fraud. And I proved it in about 10 minutes. From there, it just kind of grew. So what, your Detective Inspector Doolittle? He laughed and looked even younger as years of secrets drifted away from him. Something like that, I guess. What happened here then? He looked down at the body, and the smile dropped. Accidental death. Deliberate dumping. She died in her home, I reckon. Maybe a fight. Maybe sheer unhappy chance. Her partner panicked, knew about all the murders out here, so came and dumped her here. Maybe he's got a record or something, but I've got a registration number for the car, so we can go check it out. By the sounds of it, he's feeling guilty, so it shouldn't take long to push him to a confession. I had been nodding along till I fixated on one word. We? He looked back at me and blushed. I thought so. I mean, I could use a hand working all these cases, and you can work the same way as me. Hold on. You mean become a detective? Don't you want to? I mean, in truth, I hadn't thought about it until then. My eyes fell to the corpse again. How many things had she been planning to do, or put off doing? I had to swallow the lump out my throat before I could answer, though. All right, I'm in. Assuming you can sort it with the boss. The detective grinned at me. I have a lot of pull. I can figure something out. He stuck his hand out which I took. Detective Inspector Christopher Griffiths, Officer Iris Andrews. A pleasure to meet you, Iris. Now, let's go talk to a murderer, shall we? Murder at Ex-Ear-Con. The extreme ironing convention was infamous in Preston. For the last 8 years, extreme ironers from around the world fell upon the city. Their antics in the streets caused emergency calls for days. Ironing on top of city buses. Ironing while hang gliding over downtown. Ironing while belaying down the cupola of City Hall. Every year, there was one incident that truly left its mark on Preston. This year, the incident would be the death of Sean Morrison. I looked down at Sean's body, his face brutalized by a blunt object. In any other situation, identifying the murder weapon might have been tricky. But not here. Not at Ex-Ear-Con. There was no mistaking the iron-shaped dent in the dead man's head. I had seen it before. I clenched my fists, remembering the day that my wife had been murdered 8 years ago. The image of her face haunted my nightmares. Beautiful until it had been ruined by a Bosch TDA 2650 G-Bide Quick Fill, the highest rated iron of 2012. Preston's coroner had estimated the time of death at about 2:15 a.m. The murder weapon had not been found yet, and the trail of blood leading out of Sean's hotel suite had run cold quickly. No witnesses had come forward. The extreme ironing community was notoriously tight-knit and likely to protect their own. They had done so in the past. Detective Clay. They're ready. A police officer on scene had separated the suspects, and she handed me a list of names. I squared my shoulders and got started with the interview process. Anna Kruger, the hotel manager, was already in Sean's suite, pacing around and surveying the extensive damage. Pieces of drywall and broken glass littered the carpet, and the telltale burn marks of overly hot irons defaced the furniture and carpet. I watched her until she stopped mid-pace near the end table next to the couch and knelt down. Anna stuck her arm in a hole in the wall and pulled out a Panasonic A66K automatic iron. I never would have allowed these extreme ironing United States assholes to have Ex-Ear-Con here again if I weren't so hard up for money. At least they rented out the entire place. Anna glared at the iron-shaped hole in the drywall. They always ruin something. They leave burns, run up the electric bills, plugging in all their stupid irons. She raised her eyes to meet mine and brandished the iron. But this time, Sean went too far. When was the last time you saw him, Miss Kruger? He came down last night, around 11, asking for more towels. She pointed at a pile of charred towels near the couch. I can see why he asked. Anna held out the Panasonic iron, her hand shaking. The temperature gauge is on the highest setting. He was burning things, on purpose. If he were still alive, I'd sue him into oblivion. Miss Kruger, do check with that ironing board vendor, detective. I had to chase him out of the storage room around 2:30 this morning. Mighty suspicious, if you ask me. Errol Fleming, the owner of the Cleveland Ironing Board Company, leaned against the wall in his room. That damned Sean, he growled, German accent thick on his tongue. He ruined me. He posted negative reviews of my new ironing board design and used his extreme ironing championship fame and influence to boost them. Go on, the Cleveland steamer. It was a board made specifically for steam irons. Sean was a proponent of steam irons, but he said my board had a shitty design. His was the #1 review on Amazon. Everyone saw it. My profits tanked. No one bought. I am glad he is gone. I'm sure his negative reviews were the only reason no one bought the board. Errol's eyes widened, and he straightened his back. I am not happy he is dead. That is a terrible thing to say. I am innocent, of course. Mr. Fleming, can you tell me what you were doing in the storage closet last night? Color rose to his cheeks. I cannot say. It would ruin me. I thought your business was already ruined by Mr. Morrison. Yes, my beautiful Cleveland steamer. But I had other boards in development. What does this have to do with your excursion? Errol sucked in a breath and held it until I thought he might faint. Finally, he breathed out and answered. I was looking at the hotel's ironing boards. I frowned. I couldn't come up with any good ideas, he wailed. I was looking for inspiration. You can't tell anyone that I'm an ironing board design fraud. Errol slumped back against the wall. Godverdammt, he whispered. Thank you for your time, Mr. Fleming. Please, wait. You should talk to the tall man with curly hair. I saw him sneaking out of Sean's room last night, after 2. Thomas Prince. The tall man with curly hair was Thomas Prince, a longtime advocate for the use of steam irons over dry irons in the extreme ironing competition world. Thomas was a prolific donor to Kickstarter campaigns for new steam iron technology, and he wielded a Rowenta DW52700 1-focus Excel steam iron during competitions. He looked up from the hotel bed when I walked in, eyes red and puffy. Detective, I hear you were out late. Yeah, I went to see Sean. Any particular reason? We're friends. Thomas frowned and corrected himself. Were friends, Mr. Prince. Your visit makes you the last person to see Sean alive. That doesn't mean anything. Have you talked to Noah yet? He was going to drop some major news on us tonight, and Sean got wind of it yesterday. He was so upset. What news? Sean wanted to take over Eos. He thought Noah was doing a shit job, and he's never been shy about voicing his opinion. Noah threatened him, so Sean took a swing, caught him right in the jaw. Good thing he has a weak punch. Go on. Thomas leaned back. Not much else to say. I went to Sean's room to talk him down after that. He was pretty shaken up and talking about leaving EUs completely. Noah had really gotten him riled up. I appreciate the information. In the meantime, I would like you to stay right here. Thomas shot me an annoyed look. Am I still a suspect? You were seen leaving Sean's room last night, and his body was found this morning. I'd say you're the primary suspect. I called for additional officers to watch Thomas's room while one officer remained inside. Noah Bowers. I approached the sullen president of Extreme Ironing United States, Noah Bowers, in the hotel's business center. He looked up from his seat at a small conference table. Before I could say anything, Noah spoke. You think I did it, don't you? I didn't say that, but you know I threatened him, right? Well, he threatened me first. I didn't want him to, think I was intimidated. Noah stood up and spun one of the chairs. Look, bro, Sean was a dick, okay? That's no secret. So he wanted to oust me and, take over as president of the EIUS. That doesn't mean I killed him. I said nothing. Noah grunted and crossed his arms. If you really want to know who did it, you should talk to his fiancée, Marin, bro. She was gonna, poison him or something. Marin knocked. I visited Marin in her hotel room. She was sitting calmly on the hotel bed, watching a reality show, and she didn't bother to look up as I entered the room. I understand you found Sean this morning, Ms. Knox. Sure did. I went in to make sure he was up in time for the convention. He liked to sleep in. You had access to his room? She stared at me. Duh. We were engaged. You don't seem upset that your fiancé was murdered. Marin shrugged. I'm not. He was an abusive, cheating piece of shit, and I was going to end things tonight. But now I have to thank someone for saving me the trouble. I understand you were planning to poison Sean. Marin cocked a thin brow. Why would I poison him when I could leave him? That's why I got my own room in the first place. I was thinking of putting eye drops in his food so he'd shit his guts out. So yeah, maybe that's technically poisoning him. But he wouldn't have died or anything. It's still an actionable offense, Ms. Knox. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't do it. She paused and thought. You should talk to Eddie. I saw him arguing with Sean yesterday. It looked pretty heated, but I didn't stick around to listen. Probably something to do with steam versus dry irons again. Eddie is crazy for dry irons. Eddie Wu was doodling on hotel stationery, but he put the pen down as I walked into his room. I understand you and Mr. Morrison exchanged words yesterday. We have the same argument every time we see each other, Eddie said, sitting up a little straighter. He's always going on about steam iron superiority, but he fails to see the beauty and simplicity of a classic dry iron. When did you last see Mr. Morrison? Eddie continued, as though I hadn't spoken. Using a dry iron is an art form. He walked across the room towards an ornate case. Let me show you. That's okay, my iron, he cried out in panic. Eddie showed me the empty case. Where is it? How? Eddie sank to his knees, tears spilling from his eyes. My glorious iron. I can't believe it's gone. Mr. Wu, I don't care about your needs, detective. What about mine? My iron is missing. The perfect soul plate, unblemished by steam holes, polished to a high shine. Did you know I had a custom handle built to fit my hand perfectly? My heart skipped a beat, and an image of my wife thrust itself into my head. The iron mark on her face wasn't perfectly smooth. There were spots, steam holes, but Sean's mark had no holes. He was killed with a dry iron. Mr. Wu? I said, struggling to keep my voice even. Who else here is a dry iron aficionado? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. Eddie grinned like the Cheshire Cat. Sean Morrison. Did anyone else know? Eddie shrugged. This is a small world, detective. It's hard to hide something so scandalous. His grin faded. You should talk to Thomas. Thomas Prince. Thomas jerked up in surprise as I walked in the door. He set aside the iron he was cradling and wiped a tear from his eye. Mr. Prince, how well do you know the others at this convention? Well, me and Sean go way back, of course. Eddie's been around for a while. We don't agree on irons, but he's a nice guy. Marin came into the mix a couple years ago. Noah's been the president of EIUS for a long time, but he mostly keeps to himself. I don't know him that well. Do you know if anyone might have a motive to harm Mr. Morrison? Marin and Sean have been together for a long time, but that's been falling apart. Thomas made a face. She's a real piece of work. I wouldn't trust her with my iron under any circumstances, but I don't really know the others well enough to say. I took a deep breath. Did you know that Sean was secretly into dry irons? Thomas winced. I went to visit him after he argued with Noah. He was really stressed out. I don't think he meant to tell me, but he slipped up. He told me about his preference for dry irons. Go on. I was shocked, you know. We had spent years talking about the merits of steam irons over dry. Thomas threw his hands in the air. I mean, you can use a steam iron as a dry iron. But he just kept talking about how cool Eddie's iron was. Thomas stood and walked to the window. I asked him if I could have his championship-winning steam iron. And I know it was kind of selfish to even ask, but it's a steam iron. He faced me, his mouth hard. If he was so into dry irons, there's no reason he needed to keep that one. I knew the answer already. He said no. Thomas hung his head. Yeah, that's when I noticed it. A plug barely poked out from under the hotel's dresser. Thomas noted my pause and followed my gaze. We lunged at the same time, but I reached the dresser first, knelt, and yanked the cord, and there it was. The Oster Heavyweight GCSTGV 1109 Classic, stained with what was surely the victim's blood. Eddie Wu's missing iron. I expected to fight my way out of the situation, but Thomas sat down heavily and exhaled. I didn't mean to kill him. I backed away from Thomas to the room door. Sean had Eddie's iron in his room. He was messing with it. I think he was trying to break it so Eddie wouldn't win in today's competition. Thomas groaned. And that was bad enough. If the sponsors found out, we'd lose all those investments. But when he refused to give me his steam iron, I just snapped. I stuck my head out the door and motioned for the nearest officer to assist me. Before I could even think about what I was doing, Sean was on the floor, and I was holding Eddie's iron. I brought it back here to hide it, but you see how much good that did me. Thomas looked down at his hands. I'll never iron again. The officer casually entered the room. I won't resist, he said, looking straight at me. I messed up. Mr. Prince, please remain still, the officer said gently as she bent down and handcuffed Thomas's hands behind his back. The officer led Thomas away, but the satisfaction of solving the case rang hollow in my heart. I returned to other suspects to tell them they were free to go. When I got to Marin's room, she simply nodded and started packing her things. But there was something I had to know. Did you know your boyfriend was a dry iron promoter? Marin's eyes widened. Sean's been advocating the benefits of steam irons, both in competition and in the home, for years. The slight tremble in her voice gave her away. She was hiding something. What aren't you telling me, Ms. Knox? She stared at the floor and bit her lip. Look, he'd always use a steam iron for shows and competitions because that's what people expected. He had a sponsor to please, a wealthy one, but behind closed doors. Marin took a deep, shuddering breath. Behind closed doors, we used a dry iron. She buried her face in her hands. Oh God, you can't tell anyone. His reputation would be destroyed. The sponsor would pull all their funding out of the projects he and Thomas were working on. Like what? They had an idea to improve this older model steam iron, right? To make it more efficient and easier to clean. The steam holes on that model were tough to clean, but it was otherwise a great iron. I would even use it sometimes when he wasn't at home. I liked it better than his dry iron. She laughed sadly. He would have been so mad. Marin stood up and started to pace. Anyway, he never got a new steam iron, so he always used the same one. His championship iron. It was iconic, blue and white. Have you ever seen it? Something in her voice made me uneasy. Let me show you, Marin continued. It's beautiful, Xavier. How do you know my name? She opened a decorative case near the foot of the hotel bed and pulled out an iron. My blood ran cold. It was a Bosch TDA 2650 G quick fill. Marin smirked at my expression. You recognize it, don't you? Or rather, you recognize the shape of the soul plate. It was the same one that killed your wife 8 years ago. She stepped closer, her grin widening. He did it, you know? Sean killed her. She found out his secret obsession with dry irons, and he couldn't allow her to talk. I inched my hand towards my concealed pistol. Put the Bosch down, Marin. You don't have to do this. Marin raised the iron, her pupils dilated with madness. But I've always wanted to know what it felt like, what it could feel like to kill someone. She swung the iron towards my head, barely missing. I called for backup and pulled out my pistol to defend myself. I don't want to shoot you. 2 police officers swept into the room before I had to take any further actions. Marin was quickly disarmed and handcuffed. She glared at me as the officers pulled her from the room, but she said nothing further. My heart ached with memories of my wife. Whether he knew it or not, Thomas had given her a little bit of justice, but that didn't excuse his actions. He would be behind bars for a long time. Marin would serve time for being an accessory to murder, for covering up Sean's crimes. I would have preferred to see Sean stand trial, to look into his face with satisfaction as the bailiffs hauled him away. I would have to content myself knowing the truth of my wife's murder had finally been ironed out. Muddled murder. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the blood. My mind went into a full panic mode, and I flipped out. I started checking all over myself to see where I had been injured, my bloody hands smearing the blood all over my clothes. Then I realized I wasn't injured, which could only mean one thing. It was someone else's blood, but whose? I had no idea. In fact, I had no idea where I was. All I could see around me was a dark, narrow street. I was standing on the sidewalk, quite far away from the nearest streetlight. Above me was the clear night sky. A handful of stars shone down upon me, and I felt that they were supposed to give me some comfort, but my heart rate refused to slow down. And then I saw it. There was a body on the curb, barely 10 meters away from me. My natural instinct was to go and check on the person, but something stopped me. I wondered what, but my memory refused to provide me with anything in my past. I tiptoed closer. Not another soul in the alley as I went and checked. I was still a couple of meters away from the man when I realized he wasn't breathing. There was a pool of blood spreading from his torso and onto the sidewalk. The man was dead, and I had blood on my hands. I didn't need any memory to add up the two. A car's headlights suddenly flashed to life in front of me, and the engine revved on. It reversed a bit, and then sped past me, barely giving me enough time to register the man sitting inside. From the small pharmacy in front of me, a short, bearded man came out and started pulling down the shutter. I did the first thing that came to my mind. I ran. I had no idea how long I had run for. But I am sure it was a pretty long time because my t-shirt was completely soaked in sweat by the time I stopped. And it was an early winter evening. I realized I was on a bridge, a few cars going by, couples walking, holding hands, families with little children. I wondered who my parents were, if I was married or had a romantic lover. If I only had my memories back, my life. But the sight of my hand snapped me right out of those thoughts. It didn't matter, because nobody would want to be related to a murderer. I didn't know if someone else had killed him, or if it had been me. But suddenly, it occurred to me that it would be better if I didn't know. If I did remember my past, what if I realized that I had murdered him? Not only him, but maybe others too. Just that thought made me doubt myself, and wanting my memories back seemed like a dangerous option. I descended the bridge to reach the turbid river flowing past me, and thankfully washed up my bright red hands in the water. My hands were numb by the time I stood up to return to the upper roads. That was when I heard something. "Oh, it was easy as cake," a man said. "Are you sure no one was there?" asked a woman. "I think I saw a girl, and she saw me." I panicked and drove forward, but the car hit her head, and she collapsed to the ground. I didn't know what to do, and I stopped to check, but she was stirring up, so I raced away, the man replied. It was coming from the other side of the bridge, beyond the wall separating the riverbank for the construction of the bridge. I tiptoed over to it and peeked out to see who was talking. Smoke blew out from a man's dark lips as he put a cigarette into his mouth again, leaning on the wall. The woman was standing across from him, arms crossed, in oversized, baggy clothes. She had a beanie on her head and wore huge, funky glasses. She was facing me, but I was well hidden in the dark. They continued talking, not caring to keep their voices down. "You dolt? The body is still there?" the woman asked. "Abandoned on the sidewalk. Shouldn't be noticed by anyone till tomorrow morning. By then, we'll be long gone." The man was nonchalant. The woman nodded, a bit anxious, while he smoked for a minute more. Then they both started climbing up the riverbank. I followed them after some time, composing my thoughts and struggling to remember something. I thought I must have waited for a minute or two, but I somehow still saw the car leaving with the two people in it, and the slate of my memory, which had been wiped clean, managed to store the number in it. Police sirens made their way to my ears, and I was a bit surprised. My blank mind recognized it. Had I heard them many times before? Was I actually a criminal? What was my past? I somehow didn't want to find out. I just stood frozen there, above the riverbank, in the headlights of the police cars, as they advanced towards me. I was literally unable to move, dead tired and fatigued. "Hands up in the air," came a voice over the loudspeaker. My addled mind did as I was told. The next few minutes were a blur as the cops came out, handcuffed me, charged me for the murder of a famous entrepreneur, and took me to the police station for questioning. Somewhere along the way, I fell unconscious. "Did you kill Mr. Pop?" I knew that was the name the entrepreneur was known by, but it sounded funny. I bit back a chuckle. "I don't know," I answered, just like I had the 3 last times. "I have all night," the officer told me. "Keep sitting then. I hope your butt doesn't hurt." I almost smirked. He glared daggers at me, and then stood up and left the room. A few minutes later, another officer entered. A plump, middle-aged woman. "Answer honestly. Did you kill Mr. Pop?" "I have been telling you honestly. I have no idea whether I did or I didn't. I just woke up with no memory of where I was or who I was." I yelled at her, yelled. She nodded in sympathy. Quite common in criminals. I was too tired to correct her, but I was exasperated. Why couldn't they just understand I was telling the truth? Nothing in my head tells me that I killed that man. "So I don't know," I declared. "There is quite some evidence, you know. The blood on your clothes matches with his." I looked down at the red spots and smears on my clothes and winced. And a shop owner in the alley says that he saw a girl with a description like yours run away from the dead body. Same orange t-shirt, same long braid, and same camo pants. Now tell me, what am I supposed to believe? She raised an eyebrow. "I really don't know," I said. The description was me all right, and I had run away. But had I killed the man? Unsure guilt surged through my veins, and the officer noticed the beads of sweat on my forehead. If I was the murderer, I was just making their jobs harder. But then, I didn't want to find out. Unsure guilt was stressful enough, and I didn't know how I could live with the knowledge that I had killed a human being in cold blood. "Are you sure you don't want to confess anything?" she asked with a tone of finality in her sweet voice. "I would confess if I remembered anything," I replied. Then I suddenly remembered something. "Wait, what's wrong?" The lady officer leaned forward, eyebrows knitted together. "I saw that car leave the bridge tonight. The 2 people in it, they were talking about something suspicious," I said, racking my brain for the words. The man raised an eyebrow. "What? I'm not sure." They were saying that they left a body on the sidewalk. A girl had seen it. They hit her head and run away. They were planning to escape tonight. I narrated the incident. "How does that make a difference?" "It does," I said, as I saw my spark of hope being snatched away with it. "You should check. I remember the car number. You know the number plate, huh?" The 2 police officers had tracked the number plate to a road by the river. where a car had been abandoned. "Go home," the woman told me. "I don't know where I live." "Then wait here. We're going alone." I scowled as I followed them out of the police station, and their car revved away. Then I saw a cab passing me and jumped in. "Follow that car!" We followed the car for 25 minutes until we reached a road running parallel to the river. The police car had stopped behind the car I had seen before, and I told the cab driver to park behind it and jumped off. I rushed to the shore where I could see the river and a small boathouse in the distance. The river was wide at that point, the current slow. To my left were the mountains into which the river bent, and my right were the police officers near the boathouse about half a kilometer away. I saw the man and woman I had seen earlier, along with a dark guy in shoes, pull out a rusty old motorboat and push it into the water and jump on. "Put your hands in the air. You cannot escape tonight." The officers pointed their gun at them. In their surprise, someone suddenly activated the turbines, and they sped ahead into the river, moving towards my side. The motorboat was slow. The turbines were sputtering and malfunctioning as the boat raced away, forearmed the routing and chasing officers. I don't know what I was thinking, but I barely hesitated a second before jumping into the river to my left. They were speeding towards my side, cutting through the middle of the river. I was perpendicularly closer, and I knew I could reach the center before they did. I swam in smooth, rapid strokes, cutting through the water like a literal fish as I aimed towards the center where they would reach in about 10 seconds. I think they were too preoccupied keeping their eyes on the officers because they certainly didn't see me coming. The cold water didn't faze me. It was like it was part of my blood. Of course, the adrenaline counteracted it, and I had no trouble speeding through the limpid surface. As expected, I reached 1 second before their boat. As it zoomed past me, I somehow managed to grab hold of the end. I clambered on, somehow still unnoticed by the 3 people, while the officers stared at me, flabbergasted. They were too scared to shoot, let it hurt me, so it all depended on me. I crept forward and elbowed the cigarette man in the neck sharply that he fell to the ground immediately, somehow unconscious. The woman turned to me, ready to battle in her large hanging clothes. I ducked to avoid her punch, grabbed her arm, and twisted it behind her back. Then I kicked her off the boat as it continued speeding away. The last man was the one with the shades, driving the boat. He stepped out of the seat while the boat continued towards the hills and turned to face me. Even though I couldn't see his eyes, a chill ran down my spine, and he attacked. I think my brain was a little slow to process as his kick swept me off my feet and knocked the air out of my lungs. Panting, I pushed at the floor to get up, while he grabbed my hair and pushed my head towards the whirring motors of the boat. He pressurized me into the blades while I used all my physical strength to hold my head up. He pushed once, twice, and the third time, I finally got a grip with one hand to ram the other into his sternum. As he doubled back, I realized that the boat was heading straight for a wall of soil and bushes. A hill was straight ahead. I rushed towards the wheel, but before I could rush it, the man got up and tugged me back. I wrestled with him, watching the imminent crash drifting closer. He kicked my thigh, and I launched a punch at his shoulder, ran again for the wheel. Grabbing the cool metal, I yanked it to the right, just as the boat curved around the edge of the hill, and barely avoided the collision. The man with shades had managed to stand up at the end of the boat, but my sudden turn threw him off balance, and he splashed into the water. I steered the boat towards the shore as I saw the other two criminals climbing out and being ambushed by the police officers. I finally parked along the bank and stepped out, my mind in a whirl, even more muddled than before. The two officers emerged, dragging along the two criminals. The woman went onto the boat and brought the third guy, then came back, and both of them patted my back. But I wasn't paying attention. My mind was elsewhere. How did I know how to do all that? How did I swim so well, or fight so brutally? The worst thought crept into my head. I could be a trained assassin or mercenary. I was too much of an expert, and I had been pretty close to the dead man. I was scared that I had led the police on a wild goose chase. I must be the real criminal. I must have killed Mr. Pop. I didn't want to find out. When I voiced my concerns, the police officers waved them away, too busy congratulating me. But my head refused to believe them, fearful of what my past could hold. Hey, do you remember me? A man rushed into the hospital ward, worry lines creasing over his forehead. Two people who claimed to be my parents were standing on one side of my bed, explaining to me that he was my brother. I'm sorry, but no, I said, and he looked like he was about to burst into tears. My parents leaned over and hugged him as they also squeezed my hands. I saw the two police officers appear from the door. They had huge grins on their faces. All three of them confessed to the murder, and we also found them guilty of a couple more. They have been duly imprisoned. Great work, kid, the man said. And on top of that, it was announced a couple of hours ago that you are going to be awarded a bravery medal for your courage. The woman was about to jump up and down. I found it difficult to smile. But how was I able to defeat them so easily? How could I fight so well, swim so smoothly? Are you sure I'm not a danger to society? My brow was furrowed. No, not at all. The man who was supposed to be my father guffawed and slapped my thigh. Don't worry. I'll tell you a bit about yourself. You are 26, won 7 medals for swimming in high school, and now teach martial arts at a renowned academy. Suicide pact. Every Friday, my parents cook the most delicious turkey that has ever existed on Earth. They use natural ingredients that I have never heard of before. Every time they make it, I ask them for the recipe. They just never tell me. Instead, they looks at me with a smile mixed with sadness and joy, and tell me that one day, when their time has come to pass, they will tell me. Tell me the secret ingredient. This is the routine that happens every week, every Friday. Little do they know that their time will be my time too. Although I know that my parents won't tell me the recipe, I give it another shot. Walk up to them, give them my best smile, take their hands, and ask. But they already know what I am going to say. They grin and shakes their heads, nodding towards my room, sending me the message to get ready for bed. I sigh and slump towards my room. I stop in front of my door. The door is decorated with pictures from my favorite band. The picture on the very left makes me smile. It's the picture of my favorite band member making a silly face. I laugh dreamily and stare into his brown eyes, but I'm not the only one laughing. Soon enough, my older brother Luke is pounding me on the back and laughing. Not really a nice laugh either. Lola, you've got to stop this, he chokes out. Stop what? I demand, my brows furrowed. Stop joking around with your pictures. It's too funny to handle. I raise my eyebrows high and stare at him, long and hard. Finally, I shoot him a glare and step into my room. I don't forget to slam the door right into his laughing face. See, this is the reason I need to get away from my family. My brother. He is so annoying. You wish that you weren't born. And I don't. Yes, I am killing myself because of my brother. It was either this or run away. But if you run away, you just get kidnapped and killed anyway. So what's the difference? Once safely in my room, and my brother gone, I sneak into my closet and pull out the small but strong bulletin board that I got from my grandmother on my birthday. I forgot to check yesterday's square on the calendar, so I will do it with today's. I take the white chalk I have been using the past month out of the box that it was in and slash 2 white lines next to the others. When done, I carefully put everything back in my closet and lie on my bed. Breathing slowly, I run down the suicide plan in my mind. When I come back to my room from brushing my teeth, something in the room is different. The lights are off. Did Mom come in here? Dad couldn't, because he's in Miami for work. Oh no. What if my brother came in here? I try to shrug it off and crawl under my covers. The whooshing of the wind outside quickly drowns me in my sleep, and all my thoughts are lost. The next morning, I get up late. I quickly eat breakfast and get ready for school. I arrive at school on time, but I'm still worried about the lights turned off yesterday. Someone must have went into my room, did something, and forgotten that the lights had already been on when they went in. My worried look must be severe, because Angie, my best friend, asks me if I am all right at lunch. "Oh, I'm fine, I reply. Her head is cocked to the side, and she studies me closely. I try to give her a brief smile and shrug it off. This is a good idea, because Angie knows that my shrugs are all truthful and intentional. I feel so bad, though, for betraying and lying to my friend, even though she can help me get out of this mess. I remind myself that some things are meant to be dealt with alone and individually, but I still feel bad. So before the lunch bell rings, I ask her if she wants to come over, and her face lightens. She tells me, of course. When school ends, we meet up at our usual spot near the gate and start to walk towards my house. We talk about the usual things: hallway gossip, grades, and boys. When we get to my house, we watch a movie and make slime, which fortunately takes my mind off things. Before Angie leaves, she hugs me tight and whispers into my ear that she knows something is wrong and that she can help me anytime with it. She tells me that I am never alone. If only that were true. Even after our time together, Angie and I only used up 3 hours of our time. I still have 1 hour left to chill. I get bored, so I decide to slash today's mark earlier than usual and head into my closet. When I pull out the bulletin board, though, all the tally marks are gone. I'm so shocked that I gasp out loud. What? What? I stutter. I was not going to let this go. If someone had done this, only my brother could. My mother wouldn't do such an evil thing. But if my brother had read the notebook, then he would know that he was being such a pain. I wait until he comes home from work and confront him. It did not work as well as I thought, though. He convinces me that I can't kill myself because of one person, that I need more bad things in my life to hate myself enough and kill myself. We sort it out, and he swears to not be much of a pain anymore. I guess some things are meant to be dealt with by talking and not action. I have learned my lesson: betrayal. Mr. Nicholas, you have been caught for breaking and entering every house in the world once a year for as long as anyone can remember. That was what the judge said. Anything to say in your defense? Your Honor, I was delivering presents. For children, they were happy, stuttered Santa. A liar! You gave me a toy doll when I was 12 years old, yelled an adult. Well, I thought you wanted one, said Santa, wondering if this was a nightmare. And you didn't wipe your feet on the mat when you came in," said a very tall and skinny woman who was the shape of a pole. "Now I have to walk around my house with the smell of reindeer dung. It's that bad. I sleep next to my reindeers, and they don't smell that bad," one very fat man, who looked like if you threw him from the tallest building, he would bounce, said, "One day when I was little, I woke up on Christmas and went to my Christmas tree. I saw a box of chocolates, but guess what? It was out of date," guessed the judge. "It was covered in reindeer poop," said the skinny lady. "It was half-eaten?" asked another man. "Wrong. He had put it under the tree. I couldn't reach it." Everyone let out a gasp, as if it was worse than what they said. The judge banged his hammer against the wooden plate. All right, it's settled. A lifetime in prison. He was shipped off to a prison for magical things. There he met the Tooth Fairy and Frosty the Snowman, a black bird with an injured wing, and a man called Jeff, who claimed he was a muffin, and Neil Gaiman. He did not know what Neil Gaiman was doing in there, but he told wonderful stories of Norse gods and a girl called Coraline. Meanwhile, the elves were relaxing in the North Pole. Every day, they would congratulate each other on how they got rid of Mr. Claus, and that it was about time that they got rid of the fatty. The reindeers were happy because they thought Santa stinked. But Mrs. Claus was the most excited. She could finally fulfill her dreams of playing video games all day, every day. Thousands of years passed, and Santa became more restless in his cage. The Tooth Fairy had been eaten by his bird more times than able to be counted. And the immortal Gaiman had told thousands of tales already, and Frosty had melted more than 1,000,000 drops of water now. And Jeff, well, he sat there more than 1,000,000 minutes already. Everyone was tired, and they were sick of seeing the same things every day: stone, metal, and plastic. One night, when the guards were walking past Santa's cell, he extended one thin finger and curled it around the key. He then pulled back his hand and put the key under his tongue in his mouth. He later took out the key and began to try and push it in on the other side. His fingers fumbled, and unfortunately, he dropped the key. From inside his pocket, he retrieved a foldable walking stick and began to prod at the key, trying to pull it back when a mosquito landed on the back of his hand and sank its sucker into his flesh. Santa dropped the stick. He slapped the insect, turning it into a fat pile of greenish-yellow slime. He told his bird to go and fetch the stick. The bird did as he was told. Santa continued to prod at the key when Neil Gaiman couldn't take it anymore, and said that he should tell the bird to go and fetch the key instead of the stick. "You're right, so smart," said Santa in understanding. "Go get the key." A few hours later, he had escaped his cell and was now unlocking the cells of his friends. "All right, Muffin Man, "You're okay now," said Santa. "I need my rock to turn into a muffin again," said Jeff gloomily. "Where is it then?" sighed Santa. "It's on the second floor of the third room to the right." "Have you been there?" asked Mr. Claus. "Duh. What do you think? Then why didn't you take it yourself?" "I didn't know how," said Jeff. It took some time, but the group eventually found the staircase and got into the specified room. Santa picked up the rock and said, "What do you mean you didn't know how?" asked Santa. Suddenly, 2 security guards stepped out of the shadows and told them to freeze and drop the rock. Santa leaped out of the closest window, thinking that his reindeers would catch him. He instead landed on a very fat moose in the middle of a barn. "Come down here, it's safe," he yelled at the window. One by one, they each plopped down Gaiman on a horse, Jeff on a pig, Frosty on a cow, and the Tooth Fairy on a very cross farmer. The fairy produced a chain of teeth out of her dress pocket and wrapped it around the farmer, like one would do to a horse. The group, holding on to their animals, eventually rode to the town where Santa's trial had been held, just in time for Christmas Eve. At the first house, belonging to the lady that had said her floor stank of reindeer dung, Frosty gave her some sanitizer under her tree. At the second house, belonging to the adult who complained about having been given a doll at the age of 12, Gaiman gave her 2 black button eyes and a sewing needle. And at the last house, belonging to the man, had complained about the chocolates. Santa gave him Jeff in his muffin form and put him on a plate next to the tree. Santa thanked everyone, and he went back to his home, the North Pole. The elves and reindeers groaned and sighed when they saw his familiar red suit. They kicked him out and built a wall around the village of Mrs. Claus. Santa realized that he was tired of seeing the elves, so he trained his bird to be a professional polar bear and penguin trainer, and everyone lived happily ever after. "What would you like, sir?" "Sir, we need you." "Ed, please don't panic. Tell me what happened." "A man died at 4th Rose Street in Pie A Trust Bakery." "Pray, tell his name." "Robert Jr. Business tycoon Robert Jr. A sudden alarm switches on in my mind. "You are right, sir." I hang up the phone. A new case is like coffee shots for me. Sudden shots of energy with a sudden smell of success. Being a private detective was tough in 1959. The remnants of World War were still haunting people's minds. So basically, everyone was behind food and money. Hence, the rise of murders and death of rich men were the constant headline of newspapers and weekly magazines. The police were sometimes behind the culprit, or were sometimes the culprit themselves. My first successful case was about Dorothy Madoc, a murder mystery that had shaken the neighborhood. At that time, I was 19, who had only read Sherlock Holmes as his curriculum, and used to write some articles for a newspaper column. Back then, I took the case for justice, not for fame or success. With my wit and observation, I nabbed the murderer to everyone's surprise and dismay. The success of the case made fame kiss my toes, but the police grew cold feelings towards me. First, the bitterness was one-sided. Later, with the continued collision of our thinking and ideas, it became a competition for us to prove each other wrong. Coming to the case, Robert Jr. was famous as well as an established businessman. He was constantly in the newspaper due to the rounds of an affair between him and a beautiful singer. The case was a gold mine for the press because now it had glamour and stardom. I reached the spot. It was a small sit-in bakery with musty brown walls and white windows. It was unusual for a rich man to dine here. People were thronging outside the bakery to view the sudden death. Police were having a tough time trying to control the mob. I honk my Ford car on purpose to gain the attention of the press. In seconds, a group of photographers and cameramen with their journalists were rushing towards my car. I took some time to come out of my car, but when I came out, I was surrounded by the sudden flashes which blind my irises. There is a constant tugging and screaming of journalists at my face. I raise my hand to silence everyone, to bring their attention towards me. I will ensure that the culprit is caught and the innocents are given justice. With the help of the police, we will solve the crime as soon as possible. Till then, please maintain integrity and work ethics. I make a straight beeline towards the bakery, where I'm coldly welcomed by Inspector Houston. Don't come here, fella, without any prior information. Take your media attention somewhere else. He smirks. It would be better if you pay enough attention to your duty, rather than observing my style and sensibility. He stares at me and spits on the ground. So what are the details of the case, Mr. Houston? According to the witness, Robert entered the bakery with singer Sasha. They ordered a lime tart with lemonade. Then, in the middle of the conversation, an argument burst open. A few seconds later, he asks for water, which was given by Sasha from her bottle. In moments, he clenched his head and passed out. So, where is the singer now? She is in the basement of the bakery, hiding from the press. Bring in all the witnesses, and let's interview each one there itself. We agreed to investigate the scene first. Nothing was weird, nor there was anything suspicious. Then we interrogated each eyewitness. First was the singer Sasha, a beautiful woman in her early 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her cheeks were stained by mascara, and her lips quivered from the constant crying. It was odd that a young girl like her was interested in a man who was in his late 40s. But it is not odd in a patriarchal society. I gave her my handkerchief. A man gotta respect a lady's emotion. So, Miss Sasha, what happened during your brunch at the bakery? Robert called me here to discuss some private matters. He was stressed for the past few weeks. Can you guess what he was about to discuss? I ask. She moves her head from side to side with few sobs, Miss Sasha, when Robert asked for water. Instead, you could have called the waiter. Why did you provide it from your bottle? Robert liked clean filter water. He always used to question the quality of water at restaurants. Hence, I used to carry my own source. Did you hand over the bottle to the police? She nodded. The next person was the waitress, the only witness who was present at the bakery. A young woman in her mid-20s, with hazel eyes and raven black hair. She was confident with her body language and was least affected by the sudden death. What's your name? Rebecca Taylor. For how long you are working here? Since the past few weeks. Can you describe what happened this morning? Mr. Robert was coming to our bakery for the last few days. But this time, he came with Miss Sasha. He ordered tart, and she ordered lemonade. It's wrong to eavesdrop on anybody's conversation. So I was at my counter cleaning the stoves. But in the middle of their conversation, they started arguing. Mr. Robert was demanding Miss Sasha to leave her career. Then he asked for water, to which she gave her own bottle, and in a matter of seconds, he clenched his head and fell on the ground. Where was the owner of the shop? Every morning, the owner goes to buy the supplies for the rest of the day. He went out as usual. The next person was the cleaner boy, who was not the witness. But he was there in the basement of the bakery when the incident took place. What's your name? Vade Danish. So, Vade Miss Rebecca told me that you went to the basement to take a puff of the cigarette. Sometimes you had to twist other people's confession to extract the truth. No, sir. Miss Rebecca had seen a few mice in our basement, so I went there to get rid of them. Okay, so for how long are you working here? 2 years. Everything was done. We talked to the witness. We investigated the scene, but couldn't find a clue. The police, as well as I, was waiting for the medical reports of the corpse, but it had a lot of time to it. Miss Sasha was on house arrest, and other people were under observation. I took a few days to search for the missing links in this case, but could not find one. This morning, I decided to give a visit to the bakery. Through the glass windows, I could see Rebecca taking orders from the customer and Vade helping his owner. I enter inside, and Rebecca gasps her breath seeing me. Did I frighten you, Miss Rebecca? No. I mean, yes. The incident has made us face the worst fears that we never could have expected. What will you like, sir? She asks in a humble tone. Oh, nothing. I just want to sit and relax for a few seconds. Nothing else. She goes away, leaving me in silence. I try to connect the information that I had about this case, but couldn't figure out any missing links. A force knocks at my temples. The migraine bouts were reoccurring every morning. I press my fingers at my head to ease out the pain. I search my pockets for the container of pills, but I couldn't find them. Sir, are you okay? I see Rebecca beside my table. Yeah, everything is fine. Nothing to bother about. She puts a tray in front of me. It has herb tea and strawberry custard. It's for your migraine, sir. It will soothe your nerves. I thank her and dig in my spoon because I have skipped my breakfast this morning. At the last spoon, a thought occurred to me. To clear it, I needed to meet the doctor who was examining the body as well as the reports. I rush out of the bakery without paying the bill and race my car to the hospital. Doctor, did Robert had a migraine? Because according to the witness, he clenched his head before passing out. Did he get a migraine attack while having the arguments with the singer? I don't know, lad. Maybe he had, maybe he hadn't. The technology isn't so developed to bring in the conclusions. What did you find in the reports? The mystery is that we couldn't find anything with his body. The brain and his other organs were intact. But his blood reports are weird. What does the report say? That during their argument, there was the sudden spike of salts in his blood flow. He had large quantities of salts in his body during his death, which we call hypernatremia. In hypernatremia, a person typically feels thirsty. The most serious symptoms of hypernatremia result from brain dysfunction. Severe hypernatremia can lead to confusion, muscle twitching, seizures, coma, and death. So, how did this condition occur in his body? Any clue? We couldn't find that, but the bottle that Miss Sasha gave had typically weird ingredients and salts. I think you should further investigate it. The police were informed about the reports, and we both rushed to the villa of the singer, who is currently under house arrest. Miss Sasha, we found salts and weird ingredients in your bottle, and Mr. Robert died from severe hypernatremia. The Justice of Sword points at you, because before he had passed away, he demanded water from you. I drink salt-infused water to keep my voice intact and to keep throat infections away. She started to sob and pleaded in front of us that she was innocent. She was taken in for police custody, and the court will manage the rest of the hearing. We gave a press conference about the case and addressed questions of the media. After a few days, I visited the bakery again to pay my pending bill and to meet the staff. The staff members were happy to see me and greeted me with warm smiles. I paid my bill and talked to each staff personally. Rebecca was happy and asked me about my migraine conditions. That day, how did you know that I got a mild migraine attack? My mother was suffering from migraine, so I recognized the symptoms really fast. So, you live with your mother? No, sir. My mother passed away a year ago. I live on my own. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Well, take this. I take $50 from my wallet and hand it over to her. Take it as your tip and use it wisely. She takes the money and her warm finger brush with mine. Her cheeks tinge like strawberries, and she gives me a peck on the cheek. I smile at her and walk towards the door. Sir, please do come here again. I turn around and say, I will come if I have time. I know you will. I nod to her and sit into my car and drive to my home with a smile. I was watching a soap opera on television while cooking my dinner. Then I hear a knock on the front door. "Who is there?" I shout, switching off the television. "Sir, it's me, Daniel." I take a sigh of relief and opened the door. Daniel was my counterpart, as well as my personal spy. He used to track the backstory of the cases, as well as the victim. "So, Daniel, what brings you here?" "The back history of Robert Jr. Tell me the juicy details." "He was a drug dealer in South Carolina and was once arrested while delivering a load of cocaine capsules. This businessman earns the white money with the help of the black money," I said. "Listen, he used to execute his plans with the help of a female doctor. But after his arrest, she was absconding and still is on the wanted list. Here, see her photo." I take the file to view, and my head spins. I reach the kitchen counter for support. I could not believe my eyes. It was Rebecca. "What happened?" Daniel asked. "She is the waitress who works at the bakery where Robert had died." For a few seconds, we glared at each other and rushed to our cars. I sped up my car, not worrying about getting a fine. I rush into the bakery and shout, "Where is Rebecca?" Vade rushes towards me with a note in his hand. "Rebecca quit her job this morning and left a note for you." I take the note and read, "Dear Thomas, take a warm coffee with a heavy breakfast to curb your migraine attacks. Before sleeping, drink a nice herbal tea. It will cure the migraine away. And what else will you like, sir? Your friend, Rebecca." Something catches my eye across the street, and I rush towards the window to see clearly. It's Rebecca, with rendered auburn hairs and a wicked smile. She waves at me, gives a flying kiss, and in the next second disappears. Murder warning. This is quite long. On Google Docs, it was 8 pages and 1,617 words long. I hope you like it, though. Eleanor Gray knew who the suspect was. She was one of the best detectives in Europe and never got a case wrong. But this one was different. Different because it was harder than her previous ones. Harder because all the suspects she had chosen could be guilty or innocent. It could be Riley or Olivia, but she knew it definitely wasn't Emma. Emma was too sweet. But Eleanor had chosen Emma as one of her suspects because she was there for the entire murder. She heard the helpless screams. She saw the scarlet blood. She saw the silver knife gleaming under the moon, dripped in blood. And she didn't do anything the entire time. "Miss Gray." And for a while, Eleanor forgot she was at court. "Miss Gray, may I not need you to forget that you are at court at this moment. You may daydream all you like when you leave, but for the moment, you shall pay full attention to me and the conversation," Judge Chester explained. "I apologize, ma'am. I shall pay attention now," Eleanor said kindly. Judge Chester was very strict, but she was Miss Gray's favorite judge. She knew how to get the job done, and she never underestimated Eleanor. most likely because she was Judge Chester's once removed cousin. "Now," the judge said, "let's get back to work. Miss Gray, would you like to tell us who you think the suspect is? Or would you like your last 3 suspects to explain what they were doing?" "I would like my suspects to explain first, please." "Suspect number 1, Olivia Bailey. Explain what you were doing at the time of the murder," Judge Chester shouted over the microphone. "My name is Olivia Bailey." A red-headed girl stood up with mint green eyes and a brown tan. She was wearing a long yellow flower dress with a jean jacket over it. "And I did not murder Miss Amelia Bailey because she is my sister. Anybody who tries to kill her sister is a maniac. And may I inform you kindly that I cared for my sister deeply. I may not have shown her much affection like most siblings do. But now that she is dead, I regret it. I should have shown her more love. I was offended at the fact that you chose me as a suspect. Miss Gray, explain why you have chosen Mrs. Bailey as a suspect," Eleanor started explaining. "I have chosen Olivia Bailey as one of my suspects for many reasons. 1, she may be Miss Amelia's sister, but sometimes the suspect is the one that is the least thought of. When the Bailey sisters were growing up, they fought a lot, and most of the time, Amelia won. This murder may have been Olivia's revenge. 2, Mrs. Olivia has been absent often and found mostly at weapon shops. The knife used was a knife Olivia once bought. She may have bought it to kill her sister." At this, Olivia looked horrified. She looked as if she was about to scream and cry. But thankfully, she kept her mouth shut. So Eleanor went on. "But the knife may as well have been found by the murderer when they broke in." 3, I was hoping not to say this, but it seems as though I have to. Mrs. Olivia has been found practicing murdering techniques on a dummy in one of her friend's basements. She has been practicing throwing and penetrating the heart from a small in the back. Miss Amelia's body was found with a puncture in that same spot. That is my evidence that Mrs. Olivia might be the murderer." Eleanor finished. She stared at Olivia, who was starting back at her. She looked as if she wanted to say something. And the great thing about Judge Chester was that she knew that look. "Mrs. Olivia Bailey, would you like to add something?" "Yes, please," she said. "I would like to say that the information Miss Gray has given is false. 1, yes, when we were children, we would fight, but we would play fight. Those times when I won was the times that my sister would let me, because we all knew that she was the better fighter in the family. I only fought her on occasion so that she could find new tricks." The judge looked quite fed up here. "Mrs. Bailey, I understand where you are coming from, but we do not have the time for you to explain yourself. You may moan all you like, but for the time being, I have to trust the detective, Miss Gray. Now then, Miss Riley, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. A tall girl with black hair and brown eyes stood up. She was wearing one of the shortest dresses Eleanor had ever seen. I didn't even know there was a murder until you told me before yesterday on the phone, she said, poised and calm. Too poised and calm, which wasn't natural for a suspect, unless they were the murderer, or she was just a calm person in general. But Eleanor and Riley had gone to the same school, and if Riley lacked something, it was calmness, patience, and calmness. It's not natural, Eleanor said, for somebody to be so calm when they are being interrogated. She was standing now and walking towards Riley, her blonde hair flowing in the air, her black hat covered over her hazel eyes, her jeans reaching her ankles where her black boots reached, her black leather jacket over a red shirt. One would think that a suspect would be fighting to stay out of prison, wouldn't they? A criminal would seem calm, to cover up their fear. Wouldn't you say so? Miss Gray asked, slamming her hands on Riley's desk, leaning over to stare into her eyes, to see the truth. I disagree, Miss Gray. Riley responded. An innocent person would not fight because they would know that they do not need to serve time in prison. May I ask, Miss Riley, how many times you have been a detective trying to solve a crime? None. But if I must say so myself, I do watch a lot of court on television. And when we try to figure out who the criminal is, we are correct most of the time. And is court your favorite thing to watch? Yes. And at that, Miss Gray walked away and sat down, crossed legs on her desk, and hat tipped over her eyes, but keeping an eye on all three suspects. Now, Emma Williams, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. I was working at my restaurant, ma'am, Emma said. She was the only one who wasn't wearing a dress. Instead, she wore a white top and gray leggings. Her brown hair covered her eyes, but Eleanor could still make out that they were the color of a storm at sea, a wild and free storm, but shy, just like Emma's character. And what exactly do you do at your restaurant? Miss Gray asked. I am a waitress. I take orders of food and drinks. I am quite familiar with what a waitress is, but what I do not understand is how you know Miss Amelia Bailey. From all the records we have seen, we have not heard anything that mentions Miss Bailey. So tell me, Miss Williams, how do you know Amelia? After a moment's hesitation, Emma said thoughtfully, our parents were close friends when they were younger. I grew alongside the Bailey sisters, but we kept it a secret. That is all the information we need from you, Emma, Eleanor said in a flat tone. After thinking thoughtfully, I have decided on who the criminal is. Judge Chester stared at Eleanor, though was not surprised. "I have decided," Miss Gray went on, "that the criminal is nobody." Everyone in the room was shocked. There were soft murmurs. Eleanor could only make out a few. What does she mean by nobody? Surely she has made a mistake. "Silence," the judge shouted. "Miss Gray, I do not understand. There has been proof of Miss Amelia Bailey's death. How is there nobody who killed her?" "Let me explain," Eleanor started. "I am correct that only I saw the dead body, yes? Well, there was a puncture in her skin, in the same small of her back, as Miss Olivia was training. However, the sisters were only play fighting, like they did when they were little. They had agreed that they are allowed to use sharp weapons, and the reason Olivia was found training was for that match. Amelia was using their training room, and when the match started, Miss Amelia couldn't find her armor, so she thought she would be fine. Sadly, she died from blood loss. Yes, there was a puncture in her back, but it was very small, and somehow, overnight, she had died from blood loss. Miss Riley, you and Amelia were good friends when little, and you both loved watching court. I know from the information you gave me, you kept saying "we" instead of "I" or "me." You meant Amela as the other person, and Emma Williams. Or should I say Emma Bailey? Emma Amelia Bailey. Amelia had a twin sister, an unknown twin sister that Mr. and Mrs. Williams agreed on raising. I believe Amelia Bailey's full name is Amelia Emma Bailey. Yes, it is. So that concludes it. Nobody's guilty. Amelia Emma Bailey's death was unintentional, and she was finished. Another case closed, and she walked out of the hall to her apartment across the street. Who killed Amu's son? A loud scream pierced the stillness of the night, and it sent chills down my spine. I heard someone crying in the neighbor's house. The time in the clock showed 12:45 a.m. I was here at my aunt's house, enjoying a long vacation. After my final year degree exams, I knocked on my aunt's door, knowing that she must be fast asleep after taking her medicines. My aunt opened her door, looking worried and groggy. I heard some screams from the neighbor's house. I think there is some problem. I am going there to inquire, I said. She said she would come too, as she didn't want me to go alone. It was warm and sultry outside. We started walking towards the house in the dim lights of the street, amidst the cloud calls of night insects all around us. My aunt lived in a small, beautiful village in Kerala, which was just an hour away from the city. Her only son had migrated to Canada a few years ago and wanted my aunt to join him, but she always refused, saying she was happy in her little village, surrounded by friends and relatives, and didn't want to be uprooted. The distance to the neighbor's house was not much. There were paddy fields all around, bordered by huge coconut trees, which were swaying in the mild breeze. It was a huge house, away from all the other houses that led to a long, narrow pathway connecting the main road ahead. The house belonged to Amu, a 70-year-old widow who had suffered a paralytic stroke. Few years back, since then, had spent most of her time in a wheelchair. Amna, a middle-aged lady, was hired as a nurse, come companion, to take care of her, and she lived with Amu in the same house as she had no family of her own. There was a cook and a maid who would come in the morning and leave by evening. The lights were on in all the rooms, and the main door was open. We saw Amu huddled in the wheelchair, weeping bitterly, with Omna standing beside her. As soon as we entered, Omna came running to my aunt. She was crying, her face contorted with fear, saying nothing we could understand. My aunt calmed her down, and I went to pacify Amu, who was in a bad shape. Through their sobs, we gathered that Amu's son was lying dead in his room above, and it seemed someone had strangled him. My aunt was too stunned to react and didn't know what to say or do. We just stood there, watching Amu and her nurse clinging to each other and sobbing. By this time, some more neighbors walked in, hearing the commotion. My aunt told them what had happened, and one of them called for the police. The police came in quickly with a doctor who examined the body and declared him dead. They took charge of the body and looked around for fingerprints and other clues. There were no fingerprints, as if the killer had wiped it all after committing the crime. An ambulance was called in, and the body was taken to the hospital for post-mortem. The police came down to interrogate Amu and the nurse. Amna said around 12 a.m. they heard Dev, Amu's son, enter the house as he had his own set of keys. They heard some voices. The son was talking to someone, but they didn't think much about it, as he was in the habit of bringing his friends home. And they would have another round of drinks, which would go on till wee hours of morning. She and Amu then went back to sleep. Amna always slept in Amu's room, in case she needed some assistance during the night. After a while, they woke up to a loud thud and heard footsteps running down the stairs. By the time Amna came out, the intruder was long gone. She found the main door was wide open. Sensing trouble, she called out to Amu's son, but he didn't reply, and so she went up to check on him. Except for a night lamp, all the lights of his room switched off. He was lying on the floor, motionless. She went near him and saw some ligature marks on his neck. Being a nurse, she recognized those marks. She checked his pulse and found none. She ran down screaming. Amu was devastated to hear the news and had been sobbing since then. The police turned to her to record her statement, but she was in no state to say anything. They said they would come again to interrogate Amu. They sealed the room and warned that no one should enter the scene of crime. It's going to be a long night, so you can go home and sleep. My aunt said. I told her I'm fine, as I wanted to be with her. We stayed with Amu the whole night. She was sobbing and calling out to her only child. A doctor was called in, who gave her a sedative that soon took effect, and Amu fell asleep. It was nearly 5 a.m. when we returned home, and none of us could sleep anymore. My aunt made us coffee, and we sat at the long wooden table in the kitchen, discussing the turn of events. She looked perturbed. She said, "It's the first time such a horrific incident had taken place. The village was very safe, and they all lived like one big family. I was aware of it, as I always visited her during my school and college vacations, and it was a second home for me. Amu's husband was a wealthy landlord, and he owned nearly a quarter of the total land in the area. Amu was a very pious lady who always helped the poor, and no one returned empty-handed from her doorstep. There was an orphanage for destitute children and a home for senior citizens, totally funded by Amu. She owned many paddy and rubber plantations, from where she earned all the income. Her only son, Dev, turned out to be a lazy scoundrel. I never got along with him because he was always arrogant and rude, even as a schoolboy. He never helped in the family business. He kept bad company and often picked fights with the villagers, and sometimes even misbehaved with the ladies of the village. People tolerated him because of Amu, or he would have been languishing in jail for some time now. He had raped a poor, innocent girl, Minu, from the village, who eventually committed suicide, and Amu had hushed up the matter by compensating the girl's family handsomely, asking them to leave the village. Everyone in the village hated Dev, being the only child. Amu had spoiled him rotten. She was blind to his faults and indulged him by fulfilling all his demands, and this took him further on the road of destruction. Too late, the consequences of her indulgence dawned upon Amu. Now she was keeping a tight fist on her money, which infuriated the son even more. And there were instances where he had raised his hand on his old invalid mother for money. Once he had hit Amu so bad that she had to be hospitalized for her injuries. But she told the doctors that she fell in the bathroom. He always treated Amna as a minion and left no chance to belittle her, which she ignored only for Amu. The next day, the police came to interrogate Amu. They said the post-mortem report revealed that the alcohol level was very high in the victim's blood, and he didn't put up any resistance to the murderer. They asked Amu if she suspected anyone. She said he had many enemies, and it was difficult to pinpoint any one person. "Are any valuables missing?" asked the policeman. Amu said she kept everything in the bank, except for a little money for her personal expenses in the house. The police ruled out robbery as a motive and felt it must be some personal enmity. They had also checked his call details, but did not find anything suspicious. The last rites of Amu's son took place the next day. Amu sat there, stony-faced and dry-eyed. The whole village had turned up for the funeral, more out of respect for Amu than for her son. The police summoned her son's friends to interrogate them. They told the police that they were all drinking together in the bar. And after some time, everyone left for their respective homes. Their call records were checked, their family interrogated, but no incriminating evidence was found against them. All the goons and miscreants from the village were rounded up for questioning. But the police couldn't find any concrete evidence against any of them, and they were let off, as they all had cast iron alibis. They interrogated everyone from the village, including my aunt and me. The investigation progressed, but nothing much came out of it. The police returned after 2 weeks and told Amu that they have found no clue to conclude. It was an outsider's job. They wanted to interrogate Amna, the cook, and the maid again. The cook and the maid said they both had left the house in the evening. Amna repeated her same story, supported by Amu. The police did not argue much, and they left, saying they would keep the investigation on, and if they get any further information, they would let her know. Soon, a month passed, and it was time for me to return home. I booked my flight for the following Sunday evening, 10 p.m. I wanted to go and meet Amu, but she's still in a state of shock and wasn't meeting anyone. My aunt was feeling bad that I had to witness this horrific incident, but I assured her that I was fine. At 8 p.m., the cab driver called to say he was waiting at the end of the road to avoid the potholes and asked me to walk up to the cab. I didn't mind, as I had only one bag, and it wasn't much of a distance. I bid my aunt goodbye, promising to visit her soon, and started walking down the road. I walked past Amu's house, which was in darkness, except for a night lamp in the living room. Amu slept early, by 8 p.m., and no one was allowed to disturb her. Once she was in bed, I heard some voices coming from her living room. Thinking she was still awake, I peeped from the window to shout out a final goodbye. The sight inside chilled my bones. Amu was walking towards the staircase erect and without any support. She climbed the stairs and within no time disappeared inside the room. Amna was sitting near the lamp and reading a book. I was too scared to move or speak and stood rooted to the spot. I managed to reach the cab and literally collapsed on the seat. Throughout my journey, that scene haunted me. Amu could walk? Why was she hiding this fact? Was she the one who climbed up and strangled her son? Or was it Amna? Did they tell lies to the police that they had heard Dev talking to someone the night of murder? I was befuddled by all these questions and couldn't find any answers. I reached the airport by 8:30, checked in and sat down in a corner, lost in thought. Mr. Roy! Mr. Roy! Someone was shaking me rudely. I saw 3 policemen standing before me. I was wondering, why were they calling my name? You will have to come with us, as you're under arrest for the murder of Amu's son, Dev, one of them said loudly. Before I could react, they handcuffed me and bundled me into their jeep. My aunt was already in the police station, crying and looking at me in disbelief. How can you arrest me? Do you have any proof? I shouted. The inspector looked at me with a gleam in his eyes and asked me, do you deny that you know Minu? The girl who committed suicide after she was raped. Weren't you in love with her? Isn't it true, the moment you realized that Amu's son had raped her, you wanted to kill him? Didn't you come with a plan to murder Dev? He was throwing questions at me, one after the other, without waiting for an answer. The inspector said that after interrogating almost everyone from the village, he was perplexed, as he couldn't find any evidence against anyone. So, on a hunch, he went to meet Minu's father, who lived in another district. The father was still grieving his daughter's death. He told the inspector that his daughter was a talented artist and had received a scholarship from a reputed arts college, which had been her dream. He proudly showed all her paintings to the inspector. Among those paintings was one of mine, which the inspector instantly recognized. He asked the father about the picture. The father told him that his daughter was in love with this boy. And that moment, the inspector knew it was me. He said that night, I left the house after my aunt went to sleep, knowing she takes sleeping pills and won't wake up until morning. I waited for Dev outside his house and persuaded him to invite me in on the pretext of discuss something important. The moment we went to his room, I strangulated him. I pleaded with them that it's all just a bunch of lies and false implications. I can never murder anyone, but everything I said was falling in deaf ears. I wanted to tell them about Amu's secret, but no one would believe me. My mind was numb. I was trying to recollect the events of that night before I heard the piercing scream, but everything was blank. I couldn't remember anything. Was it possible that I had murdered Dev? I felt an icy grip squeezing my heart. Murder. Everything happened in a flash. I was just about to go to sleep when I heard the telephone ring. I used a rotary dial phone, which meant that I won't know who's calling me. I walked over to the phone and held it up to my ear. Hello? I answered. Hello. This is the Glasscam Police Department. I am the sheriff of this town. You have been convicted of the murder of a person named Paul Smith, who was killed this night. I have sent a few officers to escort you to the department, the sheriff replied. Excuse me, but I haven't done anything wrong, I replied, stammering. I was in my home during the evening. Yeah, right. Tell that to the judge, kid, he said in a sarcastic tone. A knock on the door was heard a few moments later. As I opened the door, a swarm of officers piled into the room some with guns facing at me. One of them, who I assumed was the chief of police, got a pair of handcuffs and tied them around my wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," said the chief. I tried telling him that I was innocent, but he said the same words that the sheriff said. What a coincidence, I thought to myself, as I was being taken to the back seat of the police car. I don't remember much after that. While I was in the car, I kept arguing that I was innocent, but the officers ignored me. My height and weight were taken after I got to the station, and I was placed in a small cell. It wasn't cozy at all. Just the life essentials were there. A bed, sink, and toilet. I was too weak and tired to stand, so I started to lie on the bed, starting to drift into my sleep. I woke up to the sound of an officer opening my cell. I got up and was put in handcuffs again. He told me I was going to a trial. I had no lawyer, so they just gave me one. From the looks of the lawyer's crinkled and dirty tie, his wild hair, and slightly broken glasses, I could tell I was going to lose in this trial. A few minutes later, a car came, and I was taken into the back seat. What felt like hours later, I was in front of the judge, who would decide my fate. Looking at the spectators, I saw a group of people in tears. I assumed they were the victims' parents. They saw me looking in their direction. They scowled at me and turned their heads in disgust. I couldn't take it. For all my life, I have never made any mistakes, so it would be unreasonable if I was accused of murder. Thinking about this made my head spin. After my testimony and the lawyer's argument with the victim's family's lawyer, it was time for the jury to decide. A few minutes later, the judge said the final statement of the trial. I only remembered a little bit. The accused, James Johnson, proven guilty, with no chance of parole, no chance of bail, can only be released until further evidence is discovered. This mumbo-jumbo is gonna take forever. Let's get to the point. James Johnson will serve a life sentence. Then the gavel was heard. Snug fit? The officers joked when I finished switching my shirt and pants to the ugly, bright orange prison uniforms. Cell number 13 was where I was headed, just when I thought I had the chance to be released. The number 13 blocks the tunnel of hope, I thought to myself in a saddened tone. I wanted to prove everyone wrong, especially my friends, family, and the victim's family. But now, that chance was disappearing every second I was in this building. My family came to visit every so often. Mother and my 23-year-old brother came to visit me every day. Father died when I was 12, a few years after my brother was born. Mother always told me that I was going to be proven innocent. Greg, my brother, told me that he will find evidence to get me out. I chuckled. Everyone knows that Greg hated using his brain for education purposes. But this time, He had some hope in his eyes, which I never noticed before. Being beaten up by other prisoners took some time being used to. The food there was the worst. I couldn't be somewhere without at least one person watching me. But most of the time, it was the prisoners looking for a fight. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. That day, when my family visited, I asked them that I didn't like staying here anymore. Just a little while longer, Mother said with hope. I stared at my brother, wondering what Mother said. Question: good news or bad news? Greg asked. Why? I replied. Just answer the question, he said in an impatient tone. Okay. Calm down, I said. Bad news. I found a lead that might prove you innocent, but I hit a dead end, he said in a sad voice, while lowering his head in shame. But the good news is I broke through the dead end and found some evidence, he exclaimed, his head now up again. I was in shock. Without controlling it, I smiled. It was so goofy that Mother started to laugh, but in a hushed voice. My brother tried holding his laugh in, but he couldn't stop the burst that almost made him fall off his chair. Your court trial will begin tomorrow, he said. For the rest of the day, the thought of leaving this place made my heart feel warm. The day passed by without me even knowing it. Before sleeping, the thought struck me. What if the evidence doesn't work? Or the evidence proves me guilty again? I thought, before drifting to sleep. The next morning, I got up in a hopeful mood. The trial begins in about an hour. I quickly got ready and was taken into the court. I saw Mother, Greg, and the victim's family there. The victim's family was in a sour mood. I guess they were angry because, in their point of view, the murderer of their son was going to testify again, saying that he was innocent after being proven guilty. When Greg's evidence was in the spotlight, I thought that this might actually work. It showed that I was in my house the whole time during the murder. It showed what I did on that device during that time, which was mostly binge-watching a series. After the evidence was shown, the jury made their decision and passed it to the judge. The judge read it out loud. The accused, James Johnson, had previously been proven guilty, had no chance of parole, no chance of bail, and could only be released until further evidence is discovered. But now the evidence has been found. The jury and I have reviewed it. The conclusion was made. The decision is, exclaimed the judge, in a very dramatic and suspenseful moment. James Johnson is innocent. I was happier than ever, but didn't make any goofy grins this time. The victim's family nodded in sorrow and regret for making those rude faces at me. I was taken home, where familiar noises from the house and street filled me up with adrenaline. I walked out of the house and sat on the porch when I saw my family driving their car into the driveway. They hugged me and sat on the porch. We laughed and talked together as if nothing had happened. While enjoying ourselves, I started to ponder, what will I do next? This is a robbery. This is a robbery, I said calmly, pushing my golden hair behind my shoulder. Bring me everything. Ma'am, Just do it, I told the bank teller firmly, giving him a look. It wasn't a glare exactly, more like one of those looks your mom gives you do something wrong. I wasn't threatening him. I didn't even carry a weapon with me. But he was going to do what I say. I stared into his gold-green eyes with my baby blue ones, telling, insisting, he did what I asked. See, I didn't give orders. I never had to. People, especially men, just listened. This man, however, with his long black hair and mysterious green-gold eyes, was stronger than most. He hadn't set off the alarm. He was considering it, though, his eyes darting to it nervously, then back at me. He scanned my figure, not with desire, but as if he was searching for the weapon I didn't have. We stood like this for many minutes, no one else taking note of what was happening. I studied him closely, deciding he was quite handsome. His nose was straight, and he had these beautiful dimple marks in his chinges and cheeks. His long black hair brushed his back, and he was several inches taller than me. Not that I minded. It was actually better this way. Bring me everything, I repeated in a whisper. I urged him on, pushing him quietly with my gaze and stance. I wasn't pushy, but I was confident. No one had resisted me before. Why should I expect it to stop now? Around us, the world continued, heels clacking against the floor and boots thudding, some heavy, some light. I heard buttons being pressed, and a tiny ding of approval as a loan went through. The man didn't move. He looked at me seriously, considering my request. Bring me everything, I repeated in a whisper. His eyes whitened slightly, but still he didn't move. I could tell I was close to getting what I wanted. He was almost broken. He dragged a hand through his hair. He knew he should alarm someone. He didn't know if I had a weapon or not, or maybe he did. He glanced around, looking for anyone who might be an accomplice. Several burly, suit-wearing men stood around talking, occasionally glancing at me. Now they had desire in their eyes. I was a respectable woman, with curves in all the right places. I turned my hip slightly, just enough to show myself off. The man thought I was giving a signal, especially when one of the other men took a step towards us. I smiled one last time. Please, I added sweetly. The man left to get what I wanted. Everything. Several people stopped him to ask what he was doing, but all he did was point at me and then continued. One of these people came over to me and asked what I was doing. I told her I wanted everything. She just nodded, blankly, weakling. Soon, I had the whole bank wrapped around my little finger. The man came back, pushing a cart full of money. I peered inside and dug around, making sure they weren't tricking me. I glanced at the man and smiled at him seductively. He smiled back, winking. He was letting me know he wasn't under my control. I raised an eyebrow at him, ignoring the lusty stares the men were giving me. He raised an eyebrow back. I rolled my eyes. "Give me the cart," I said haughtily. No, I gave him a look, one that said, "Don't defy me." The man smirked. "You said you wanted everything." I smirked back. "Then come. Allow me to rob you of your job, your soul, your dignity. Only if I may steal yours." That's when I hear it. The tiny, lilting whisper in my head, urging me to love him, to listen to him. I smiled at him, knowing his secrets. "Come," I whispered. "Come to me." The man smiled and took a step closer, leaving the cart. I didn't care about the cart anymore. All I wanted was him. I swam in his beautiful green-gold eyes. I could feel him fall deeper into mine. He tugged at the cart, pulling it with him as he advanced on me. My heart beat eagerly, and I leaned forward. The part of my brain, still sane, was terrified, knowing what this man could do to me. It excited me. The man was so enticing, with full, soft lips and thick hair I wanted to run my hands through. He scanned my figure again, undressing me with his eyes, no longer looking for hands. I gave him a sly look, then turned around, leading him outside. I bent over, opening the trunk, and I felt his eyes on me the entire time. Gentlemanlike, he helped me unload the cart, hiding the money in the fake walls. I stuffed several bills in my bra in case he tried to pull something. I got the feeling he would. His voice whispered in my head, just as mine whispered in his. I excited him, and he tried to pull me against his chest, but I only smirked and pulled away, climbing into the driver's seat. I allowed him to sit shotgun. I was already several miles down the highway before anyone at the bank realized what had happened. It was too late now. I already had the money. I glanced at the man. We had the money. The man noticed me looking at him. His hand slid over the seat, resting on my thigh. I glanced at him slyly. "What? You looking to have some fun?" "Of course. But ma'am, you never allowed me to finish my sentence earlier." I frowned. I had no idea what he was talking about. The man sighed. "I was going to say, I know your secret." I raised an eyebrow, pushing my hair back. "Oh? You're a siren. I smirked. Not quite. I am what you are. The man's eyes widened nervously, like a cornered animal. No? Oh yes. The man drew his hand back, knowing he now had no power. I had robbed him blind. He thought he had control, that he had power, that he had strength. He didn't. All he had was an illusion. I laughed, and without pulling over, slid over into his lap. Now give me everything. The man, who had been excited minutes before, only looked terrified. We were cruising down the interstate with no one at the wheel. I only grinned. This was going to be fun. Citizens, death. She trembled uncontrollably as he pushed the muzzle into her forehead. Nobody moves or makes a sound. Any heroics, bullets will start flying. As you can probably tell, this is a bank heist. Cooperate, and I'll spare you all your lives. Please don't kill me. I'll take you to the vault right now. Shut it. I decide when we go, he replied as he jarred her head back with the barrel. The hostages looked on in slouched postures, with furrowed brows and gaping mouths, wondering if the gun's magazine was loaded or not. For the bank manager's sake, they hoped it wasn't, and that he was pretending to have a loaded gun, because they believed this sort of heist was to scare people into submission with no real intention to harm them. After all, it was only one guy, not a group of robbers. Hey, mister, my wife's so scared, her water has just broken, exclaimed a hostage. We need medics, quickly. I said no heroics, he exclaimed, striking the butt of the gun to the bank manager's temple. She fell in a heap, motionless. Now look at what you've made me do. I mean it, people. Don't try my patience, or one by one, it'll be you lot getting the bullet. Are you crazy? My wife is in pain. She thinks the baby is in the wrong position. We need a doctor now. He sighed and approached the pregnant woman and knelt by her side. She was shaking and sweating uncontrollably. I'm so sorry about this, but I can't have you or your husband messing this up. There's $20 million in the vault, and I want some of it, no matter what the cost. Please, just take the money and go quickly. We'll say nothing to the police, replied the woman. The bank manager opened her eyes. She sat up, propping her back against the wall. All she heard was 2 shots fired, followed by a cacophony of screams and chaos. He fired another shot to the ceiling, and the room fell silent. Order was restored. Right, you lot, clean the blood up, and then drag the pregnant woman and her husband over to the far corner, he demanded. Are you fucking crazy, man? You've killed an unborn baby and the mother and father, exclaimed another hostage. In this game, there's always collateral damage. Now shut it, he said, training the Glock on him. He glanced through a window. The street outside Citizen Bank was as normal as he'd expected. So far, 2 minutes had passed since he'd entered the bank. There was another 5 minutes before the NYPD would have the building surrounded. So far, so good. With the entrance door locked, nobody had approached or tried to enter the bank. Still partially dazed, the bank manager attempted to stand. She stumbled, but he soon skittered back to her and pushed her to the floor. "Stay down until I say otherwise, got it?" He slid the rucksack from his back and pulled out a large bag of cable ties and tied her hands behind her back. Then he tied her legs, leaving enough movement for her to walk, but not run. With 2 less hostages to not worry about, he made quick time in using more ties to bound the other 8 hostages. "Okay, people, if I hear the slightest of sounds or sense the smallest of movements, one of you will be joining those bodies over there." He hauled the bank manager to her feet and pushed her in front to lead the way to the vault. She stumbled and fell to her knees with a hard thud. He grabbed her hair and wrenched her back to her feet. She screamed, and the hostages felt her pain. In retaliation, she spun and spat in his face. She quickly felt the back of his hand make contact with her cheekbone. It sent her tumbling for a second time, but she didn't get up. He didn't let her. Instead, he grabbed her hair and dragged her to the vault. The hostages winced, imagining her discomfort as her legs flailed in a futile attempt to stall him. "Now that he's down in the vault, we have to do something?" whispered a hostage. He looked mid-30s, with a physique of a guy that worships a gym. "Are you out of your fucking mind, sir? You heard what the guy said, right? If you can cut me loose, I can take him. I'm ex-military. Apprehension is my forte. I've got a small knife in my back pocket. Can you reach it? You're gonna get us all killed trying to be the hero. NYPD will be here soon. They'll take him out." Only if someone has activated the alarm. There were moments of silence. He was waiting for a reply that never came. "I thought not. But the guy keeps checking his watch, and he thinks they're on their way. I can activate the alarm so the cops know, and then I'll take him out." "No, man. You're not hearing me. I can't let you do this. I've got a wife and kids. He'll shoot us all. What do the rest of you think? Are you with me?" The rest of the hostages didn't respond. "You try anything, man. I'll take you down myself. Just trust me, man. It's worth a try," replied a hostage. "He's trained. He knows what he's doing." The locks released. He turned the catch, and the door to the vault swung open. "What the fuck?" he said, staring into the barrel of a Glock 10. "You didn't tell me there was security in the vault," he said to the manager. She connected with his gaze and dropped her shoulders. "I ain't security," replied the guy standing at the entrance of the vault. "Stop what you're doing, and nobody else has to get hurt." It was a stalemate situation. Both guys had their guns trained at each other, fingers twitching at the triggers, and then, bang, the guy in the entrance to the vault fell. He was soon surrounded by a pool of his own blood. He began to load as much cash as he could into the 2 large holdalls by his side. He could hardly zip them up, but To his estimation, he had at least $600,000 in each. Way less than what he wanted, but enough to start out somewhere new. With one bag on his back and the other in his left hand, he grabbed her hair with his right and dragged her back to the main foyer, where he noticed one of the hostages was missing. From out of nowhere, the hostage charged toward him, thigh and drived him to the floor, like the New York Giants were playing out in front of them. They tussled about, but the hostage found himself being overpowered and had the barrel of the Glock shoved in his mouth. Bang. All the remaining hostages jump out of their skins as blood and bits of brain matter splattered all over them. The hostage lay there in a bloody, gory mess that was too much for most of them to look. "Hey, mister," we tried to tell him it was a stupid idea, but he didn't listen, replied one of the hostages. "He's paid with his life for his insubordination." He checked his watch, and 4 minutes had passed. "Time to check out. The manager is coming with me. Inform the police I have her as my hostage, and any attempt to intercept me. And she gets the bullet, right?" Exiting the Citizen Bank, he threw the holdalls in the trunk of his General Lee, while the bank manager got into the passenger side. He put the pedal to the metal and sped his way along Valley Stream. There were no police in sight. Perhaps the NYPD had other emergencies, he thought. He took a left and followed the sign that was heading for Brooklyn. "Okay, Max, you can stop calling me the bank manager now," said Elizabeth. "And you didn't have to be so rough on me. It had to look like you were another hostage. I just hope when you shot that guy in the vault, you were obscured from the cameras so it looked like me. But how did we miss that guy? I think I did good shooting him, but too many mistakes were made this time. I should have accounted for the guy in the vault." "Yeah, but you dealt with him pretty quick. From how we played it out, the cops will think you were innocent. But what about the hostage that thigh and drived you? If you hadn't have got the better of him, we wouldn't be here now. We've got enough money, and I don't have to work in a shitty bank anymore." He took another left and entered on to Interstate 678. He leant over to the passenger seat. Their lips engage. "New life. Here we come," she said. "Just another nameless victim." I just spent the entire evening in the library reading romance books with him, wanting nothing more but to feel his lips against mine. In shock, I quickly turned my head to face her. Her black hair was flowing with the wind as she leaned against the bridge, staring out at the ocean. It was beyond beautiful. What? I managed to get out. "Yep, it was you the entire time." She turned her head slightly, meeting her alluring hazel eyes with mine. "We've been best friends for over 3 years now. We've gone from rivals to classmates to friends to best friends. And that's where it was supposed to stop. Nothing more, nothing less." But the more I got to know her, and the more I got to spend time with her, the faster my heart went. Every single time. And it was only until this very moment I figured out that I wasn't the only one who felt this way. A few minutes before, OMG, they found each other in the end. Now they'll get married and be together forever, she fantasized. It was adorable how oblivious she acted, as if the world was nothing but sunshine and rainbows. You realize they probably won't get together again, right? Stop being such a pessimist, Dill. They will figure out, and when they do, they'll be together again, and bam, true love at its best. I laughed. Together, we just spent 4 hours in the library, reading nothing but romance novels. It was supposed to be enjoyable, but when you have feelings for the girl that you're reading them with, it's hard not to feel a smidge of jealousy whenever the main characters do anything romantic. Ugh, I wish I could have the perfect love story. There it was. The wish that made my heart blast into smithereens. She had a crush, one that was obviously not me. She always ranted on and on about him, how she liked him, but he didn't like her. I felt the exact same way. Well, maybe if you would just tell me who he is, I could help you, I say, trying not to sound anything but teasing. Even though she's everything I wanted, I still want her to be happy, even if it meant that it wasn't with me. Do you really want to know? She reeled, leaning towards me, trying to get me to back down. I played along. I really do, I teased, leaning closer. I could feel the butterflies forming in my stomach. Okay, how about this? I give you a bunch of hints, and with them, you try to eliminate and figure out who it is. Easy enough. She leaned even closer, waiting for me to accept the challenge. I'm about to have my heart broken. I know it, but I still end up learning closer to the point where our faces are only a few inches apart as I whisper, "Game on." He has brown, messy hair, and his name starts with the letter D. 10 minutes passed. We decided to walk home while playing our game. Over 50 possibilities eliminated. Only 3 left. That leaves Darren, Dwayne, and Dawson, I observe. So close. All right. Here are your final 3 hints. He's a bookworm with amazing grades. He's one of my friends. And he has an interesting past. I process the pieces of information, making 3 crosses, each through someone's name. Wait, everyone's eliminated then. There's no one left. Confusion rises as I go through the hints and the names, seeing if I made a mistake. Nope, there should be one, she softly says. At this point in time, we were already halfway home, stopping right in the middle of a bridge, surrounded by cherry blossom trees. I stop to think as she leans across the railing, facing the ocean. That's impossible, I comment, going through the names for the second time, still lost. Want another hint? Present, I thought. It was me? I'm in utter shock. Has it really been me the entire time? Yeah, She pauses. Suddenly, she spins around, facing me, eyes glassy. It takes a minute to realize she's crying. Hey, what's with the tears? I carefully ask as I slowly reach my hand to touch her soft, warm cheeks. I caress her face, stroking my thumb across her cheek, wiping away her tears. She doesn't respond. She just dips her head so I don't see. I carefully pull her head back up, trying to word what I want to say carefully. Hey, look at me. Slowly, her eyelids open, and her eyes, once again, find mine. I smile, knowing exactly what I want to say. You know, I've liked you since the moment I saw you. I just was too scared to admit it. Scared that you would reject me. Scared that you wouldn't want to be friends anymore. Scared for our relationship. Yet you still pulled up the courage to tell me, even if it might have brought upon rejection or humiliation. You always were the brave one. That got her smiling. Really? She asks, her smile getting bigger and bigger as I nod. Really? Our faces are only 3 inches apart. I look at her once more. She nods. I have the go. Slowly, I close the gap. Time seemed to stop. The only hint that it didn't was the wind blowing cherry blossoms all around us. My heart pounded louder and louder, feeling as if it was going to burst out of my chest. Every time she leaned in, I pressed harder, not wanting to let go. Her lips felt warm and soft, the only sensation I was able to process. The only hint that this was all real was the emptiness felt when she would slowly lean back for air. But once she came back, it felt like a dream once again. Slowly, I brought my hand to her hair and the other to her face as she rested her hands against my chest. Her hair was soft and smelled like coconuts. Slowly, I brought the hand on her face back to my side and to her chest. Softly, I pushed, applying a small bit of pressure. She leaned back and gasped. I'd finally done it. What? She uttered in confusion. She looked down, and the realization downed her. Why? Tears started spilling as she slowly started falling back. I caught her delicate body in one hand, smirking. I'd give it another minute before you're gone. Any last words? My parents are serial killers. Together, they've had over 100 victims. Once they lay their eyes on someone, it's impossible to escape. I was no different. Forced to kill as a child, tortured till I obeyed, became a force of habit as a teenager. I thought you cared. But why? She gasped. You thought you were something special, didn't you? Well, let's make sure we get this right this time. I leaned in closer, enjoying the moment. You are just like the rest of them. I spent 3 years grooming this very moment. 3 years, trying to get you to develop feelings for me, only so I could kill you in the most enjoyable way possible. I take a slow, deep breath in, a sense of happiness and satisfaction taking over me. This girl has been the hardest target so far, but I've done it. I drove the knife into her. She gasped, trying her best to stay alive, but it was of no use. The knife was deep enough into her heart to only last her a minute, tops. I gently lay her down and pull the knife out. She softly screams in pain. I get up, take one last look at my best work, smile, and walk away, spinning the knife, covered with blood in my hand. Did you ever love me, Dill? I stop. I only was able to get a few steps away from her before she screams those 6 words. I refuse to turn back, but I can't help but answer. No, you're just another nameless victim.